My name is Camelia Prescott. I'm 27 years old, and 3 weeks ago, I did something most people my age only daydream about during lunch breaks and late night scrolling sessions. I bought a house. Not a mansion, not a glossy, influencer ready penthouse. A simple 2-story cottage in Riverside with white shutters, a wraparound porch, and oak trees that have probably seen more life than I have. The kind of street where the wind sounds like it's carrying secrets, and the morning light lands on front steps like a blessing. For the first time in my life, I had a front door that was mine. My keys, my rules. If you didn't grow up the way I did, that might not sound like much. But in the Prescott house, nothing was ever free. My parents, Gregory and Elaine, liked to say things like, "Life is a ledger, Camelia. Everything gets written down somewhere." They said it when I was 12 and wanted a new pair of sneakers. They said it when I was 15 and started my first part-time job, and they took 20% of my paycheck for family expenses. They said it every time I dared to breathe without calculating what it would cost me later. So when I stood in the empty living room of my Riverside cottage, cardboard boxes still stacked like uneven city skylines, I felt something I had never felt in my childhood home. Silence, without debt attached. My own space, my own choices, my own slice of the American dream. That dream lasted exactly 11 days. On day 11, the doorbell rang. I was in the kitchen, still getting used to where I'd put things, making iced coffee at my brand new farmhouse table. My best friend, Isabella, sat across from me, swirling her straw, her dark eyes roaming over the crown molding and the big windows like she was mentally filming a home tour. "You did it, Cam," she said, grinning. "You actually did it. Little Miss Life is a Ledger bought herself a house and didn't ask Mommy and Daddy Prescott for a down payment. I'm proud of you." "You're making it sound way more dramatic than it is," I said, but I couldn't stop smiling. "It's just a house." "We both know it's not just anything," she replied. That was the exact moment the doorbell rang a second time, harder. I frowned. "Did you order food?" Isabella shook her head. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and walked to the front door, my bare feet quiet against the hardwood. Through the frosted glass, I saw a blurry silhouette, tall, broad, unfamiliar. Not a neighbor I recognized. The feeling in my stomach shifted, just slightly. I opened the door. "Camelia Prescott?" the man asked. He wore a neutral expression, holding a thick envelope like it was a piece of machinery he'd handled 100 times before. "Yes?" He handed me the envelope. "You've been served." The world tilted. "I'm sorry?" He was already stepping off the porch, muttering something about signatures and proof of delivery. I watched him get into his car and drive away while my fingers went numb around the packet. Isabella's voice floated from the kitchen. "Cam, everything okay?" I walked back to the table, every step heavy, and set the envelope down between us. My name was printed neatly on the front. Camelia Prescott, defendant. "Defendant?" Isabella read aloud, her eyebrows hitting her hairline. "What the hell?" My hands were shaking as I tore it open. Legal jargon spilled out in sharp black letters. Complaint. Plaintiff. Room and board. Accrued expenses. Amount demanded. And at the top, plaintiffs Gregory Prescott and Elaine Prescott. Defendant. Camelia Prescott. "You have got to be kidding me." Isabella's iced latte nearly slipped from her fingers. "Your own parents are suing you?" I swallowed, my throat dry. Apparently. She flipped through page after page, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the paper with increasing agitation. "What could they possibly be claiming? You don't owe them anything." They think I do," I said quietly. It was all there in writing. Room and board from ages 18 to 26. Utilities. Food. Miscellaneous family expenses. Accrued interest. "They're saying I entered into a verbal contract," I managed, "that I promised to reimburse them once I reached financial stability. Buying this house is proof I reached it." Isabella looked up at me like I'd just told her the sky was green. "This is deranged. Did you ever agree to anything like that?" "Of course not." My laugh came out brittle. "But they've been saying it for years, that living under their roof as an adult wasn't charity, that I was accumulating a debt." The words on the page blurred. Memories rose instead. My father's voice booming down the hallway. "You think you get to live here for free? You think food appears by magic? Life is a ledger, Camelia. It all gets settled one day." I always thought it was just guilt trip theater. Something dramatic to make sure I didn't feel too comfortable. I never imagined they'd put it into actual legal filings. My phone buzzed on the counter, vibrating against the wood like it was shivering for me. I glanced at the screen. "Mom," Elaine. "Are you going to answer that?" Isabella asked, eyes still scanning the complaint. Because I have about 20 things I'd like to say to your mother right now, and none of them are PG-13. I took a long, shaky breath and hit the green button, then put the phone on speaker. Hello, Mother. Camellia. Her voice was measured, controlled, that tone she used when she wanted to sound reasonable while walking me toward a cliff. We need to have a conversation about this unfortunate situation. This situation, I repeated. Your father and I are deeply disappointed that you forced us to take such drastic measures, she said. Isabella mouthed, Force them? And almost rolled her eyes out of her head. Forced your hand? My voice rose despite the lump forming in my throat. You're suing me. We invested considerable resources in you for years, my mother continued, as if I hadn't spoken. We provided you with a home while you accumulated savings. Savings that, by all logic, should have been directed towards supporting the household that sheltered you. In the background, I heard my father's voice, distant but unmistakable. Tell her we expected more respect after everything we sacrificed. Dad, if you have something to say, you can talk to me yourself, I snapped. You don't need to shout from the background like some kind of... Don't you dare take that tone with us, my mother cut in, her composure cracking just slightly. This isn't personal, Camellia. It's simply business. Business, I repeated, my voice hollow. You resided in our home as a legal adult for 8 years. That arrangement comes with financial obligations, she said. I met those obligations, I said, heat flaring in my chest. I paid you rent every single month. I have bank statements, receipts, every transfer labeled. You're not going to pretend that never happened. That minimal contribution barely covered groceries, my mother scoffed. We could have rented your room to an actual tenant for triple, someone who appreciated the opportunity. Isabella grabbed a napkin and scribbled furiously. They just admitted you paid rent. Keep that. So this is really about money? I asked. This is about honoring your commitments to the people who gave you life, she replied smoothly. We told you for years there would be a reckoning, a settlement of accounts. You told me, I said. You never asked if I agreed. You didn't object, she shot back, which legally implies consent. That was the moment my stomach turned to ice. The house didn't feel like a safe place anymore. It felt like evidence. Besides, my mother continued, let's address the elephant in the room. Where did you get the down payment for a $265,000 home, Camellia? We know exactly what you earn. You think I stole it from you? I asked, stunned. We're saying the circumstances are questionable, she replied. Money doesn't appear from thin air. I saved it, I snapped, all pretense of calm gone. I've been working since I was 15 and living expense-free in our home, my father yelled from somewhere near the phone, while we subsidized your lifestyle. That's not true, I said, my hands trembling. I paid you, for years. We're prepared to settle this amicably, my mother said, her tone shifting to something that sounded almost kind, if you didn't know better. Sign the house over to us, and you can continue living there while paying us a reasonable monthly rent. Everyone wins. Isabella's jaw dropped. You want my house? I whispered. You actually want me to sign my house over to you? It should have been our house to begin with, my mother said firmly. Family comes first. You had an obligation to prioritize us before indulging in personal luxuries. A bitter laugh tore out of me before I could stop it. My home is a personal luxury now? We'll see you in court, Camellia, she said briskly. Our attorney will be in touch. The line went dead. For a long moment, all I could hear was my own breathing and the hum of the refrigerator. They want to steal your house, Isabella said quietly. They're really going to try to take everything you've worked for. I slumped into my kitchen chair. The farmhouse table, the hardwood floors, the soft light filtering through the oak trees outside. It all felt suddenly fragile, like paper scenery, in a theater play that could be struck down between acts. 11 days ago, I thought I'd finally left their ledger behind. Now I realize the truth. My parents weren't just coming for my money. They were coming for my future. If you'd asked me that morning what the worst thing that could happen in my new house was, I probably would have said something like a burst pipe or a broken water heater. I wouldn't have said turning my living room into a legal war room against my own parents. But 2 hours after my mother hung up on me, that's exactly what it became. Papers were spread across my coffee table in uneven stacks. My laptop was open, inbox overflowing with old digital bank statements. Isabella sat cross-legged on the rug with a legal pad balanced on her knee, while a man in a navy suit and rectangular glasses scrolled through PDFs on his laptop like he'd been dropped into a puzzle he fully intended to solve. This is Nathan, Isabella had said when he arrived, kissing him on the cheek. My brother. Also, your new favorite person, family law specialist. Nathan had offered his hand. Camelia, I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances, but I promise you this. They are not going to steamroll you. Now he leaned back on my sofa, brow furrowed slightly as he read. Okay, he said at last, tapping a paragraph on the complaint. Let's strip away the emotional manipulation and look at this as coldly as they apparently are. Good luck with that, I muttered. They're claiming, he continued, that there was a clear verbal agreement that you would reimburse them for all living expenses from 18 to 26 once you achieved financial stability. The purchase of your home is being used as evidence that you reached that milestone. Which is insane, Isabella cut in. They've been bleeding her dry since she was a teenager. I stared at the papers, my chest tight. They always talk like that. One day you'll pay us back. One day the ledger will balance. I thought it was just guilt-tripping. Nathan's gaze softened, just for a second. Did you ever explicitly agree? Say anything like, yes, I will reimburse you later? No, I said immediately. I never agreed. I just didn't fight them when they lectured me. You don't argue with Gregory Prescott and walk away unscathed. That's important, Nathan said, nodding. Silence is not the same as consent, no matter how much they want to pretend it is. Isabella flipped through one of the stacks. Show him the rent transfers, Cam. I pulled up my banking app on my laptop and rotated it so Nathan could see. Years of transactions lined the screen, month after month, the same pattern. There, I said, pointing, starting when I was 18. Regular transfers with rent in the memo. Nathan adjusted his glasses. And you have these records going back how far? Since I was 15, I said. Back then it was a smaller amount, but my dad insisted I contribute to the household from my first paycheck. When I turned 18, it became rent. 30% of whatever I earned, every single month. Isabella snorted. Meanwhile, they called it family duty. Nathan's fingers moved quickly over his keyboard. This is good. Not what they did, obviously, but good for us. Consistent, labeled transfers. This undermines their entire claim that you live there expense-free. I glanced at my phone on the armrest. 2 missed texts from Ethan. Ethan, saw your missed call. Everything okay? Ethan, Cam, talk to me. I'm worried. Guilt pricked at me. I should have called him back. But I suddenly felt like my life was a cracked mirror. How was I supposed to explain to my boyfriend that my own parents were trying to repossess my future like a car payment I'd missed? Cam? Nathan's voice pulled me back. I need you to start pulling everything you have. Bank statements, pay stubs, text messages, emails, anything that shows you paying them or supporting yourself. I have most of it digitally, I said. I'm meticulous. My parents always mocked me for that. My color-coded binders, my spreadsheets. Looks like that obsession finally chose a side. Good, Nathan said. Be meticulous now. We want to demonstrate a consistent pattern. You paying your way, them taking your money, and no written contract promising anything more. Isabella looked up from a text thread she'd opened on her phone. And don't forget this, she said, flinging the phone gently onto the table. Group chat from last year. Your mom complaining about how at least Camelia pays rent on time, unlike certain cousins. Nathan's lips curved, just slightly. That's very helpful. The kettle clicked off in the kitchen. Before I could get up, a familiar voice called, Where do you keep your mugs, sweetheart? I exhaled, tension easing a fraction. In the cabinet above the coffee maker, Aunt Vivian. A moment later, my aunt swept into the living room carrying a tray. Mismatched mugs, a teapot, an ancient tin of Earl Grey she'd probably brought from home. At 55, she was my father's younger sister, but where he was sharp angles and thunder, she was soft scarves and eyes that saw too much. She handed me a mug and squeezed my shoulder. How are you holding up? I've had better Thursdays, I said. Her mouth tightened. I warned your father years ago this entitlement would end badly. Nathan looked up. You mentioned that on the phone, he said. That he's always been like this? Vivian let out a short, bitter laugh. When we were kids, if I left a toy in his room for more than 5 minutes, he'd declare it was his now. Finders keepers, losers weepers. Eventually, my parents just started buying duplicates to stop the screaming. That sounds about right, I murmured. Your mother didn't help, Vivian added, settling herself on the edge of an armchair. She turned it into an art form. We sacrificed for you, therefore everything you have is technically ours. They feed each other's worst impulses. I stared at the spread of documents on my coffee table. My parents' version of love, laid out in black and white legal terms. Did Dad always talk about life like it was a ledger? I asked quietly. Vivian's gaze softened. Always. When he got his first job, he kept a notebook tracking every favor he did for anyone. So no one forgets what they owe me, he said. I shouldn't have been surprised, but somehow, hearing it out loud made my skin crawl. Vivian turned to Nathan. You said on the phone there might be other issues with their finances? Nathan's face was unreadable for a moment, all professionalism. When people start playing games with what they call contributions and gifts and rent, sometimes they start playing games with taxes too. We'll see what the records show. Vivian's jaw tightened in a way that told me she already knew, on some level. If they've been dishonest, that's on them. The doorbell rang. All of us froze. Isabella peeked through the curtain. Her face went pale. It's your dad. My stomach dropped straight to the floor. I don't want to see him. You don't have to, Nathan said immediately, closing his laptop and smoothing his tie. Not without counsel present, which you now have. His calm steadiness was the only reason my legs didn't give out. Isabella squared her shoulders. I'll handle the door. No, Vivian said, standing abruptly, her teacup clattering in the saucer. That's my brother. This has been a long time coming. I followed them into the hallway before I could talk myself out of it. Maybe I should have hidden in the kitchen. But hiding was why we were here in the first place. From the other side of the door, my father's voice thundered. Camelia, I know you're in there. I saw the cars. Open the door. Isabella cracked it open just enough to lean against the frame. Mr. Prescott, she said, her tone impressively even. Now really isn't a good time. This is family business, he snapped. Step aside and let me see my daughter. Vivian brushed past Isabella and swung the door open the rest of the way. Robert, she said, her voice colder than I'd ever heard it, what exactly do you think you're doing? My father actually faltered when he saw her. His eyes flicked from his sister to me, standing just behind her. Vivian, what are you doing here? Supporting my niece, she said. Something you might want to try sometime. His jaw clenched. You don't understand the situation. I understand perfectly, she cut in. You're trying to bully your own daughter out of the house she worked for because you feel entitled to it. That's the situation. His gaze snapped to me. Is that what you're telling people now, Camelia? That we're villains? It's what you're doing, I said, my voice shaking but present. You sued me, Dad. That's not how this is supposed to work, he barked. We gave you a home. We fed you. We sacrificed for you. You don't just walk away and leave us with nothing while you play house in Riverside. Heat crawled up my neck. I paid you, every month, since I was a teenager. Those were token contributions, he said, waving a hand. You think that covered your share of expenses? A shadow moved in my peripheral vision. Nathan stepped up beside me, shoulders squared. Mr. Prescott, he said calmly, I'm Nathan Rodriguez. I represent Camelia. Any further conversation about this matter should go through me. My father's eyebrows shot up. You hired a lawyer? He looked genuinely offended. Against your own parents? Did you really think I'd just sign my house over and say thank you? I asked, incredulous. His face darkened. This is what they teach you now? To turn on your family? Actually, Vivian said quietly, she's finally learning how to protect herself from her family. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of the wind moving through the oak trees and my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. My father took a step forward, but Nathan didn't budge. I strongly advise you to leave, Nathan said. Showing up unannounced at your daughter's home while there's an active legal dispute is not wise. This isn't over, my father growled, stabbing a finger in my direction. You owe us, Camelia. You've always owed us. One way or another, the ledger will balance. He turned and stalked down the porch steps, his anger trailing behind him like exhaust fumes. Vivian exhaled shakily. Isabella shut the door with more force than necessary. I stood there in the hallway, staring at the wood grain, feeling like the house itself was holding its breath with me. Nathan finally spoke, his voice gentle but firm. Well, he said, now we know exactly what we're dealing with. He looked at me. This isn't just about money for them. It's about ownership, control. I nodded slowly. Then we'll take that out of their hands. I didn't know it yet, standing barefoot in my hallway with my heart trying to escape my chest. But that moment, choosing to fight, was the first time in my life I truly stepped out of their ledger and wrote something for myself. The courtroom wasn't nearly as big as I expected. On TV, courtrooms look like cathedrals, soaring ceilings, grand acoustics, spaces built for justice to echo in. But this one was small enough that when I sat down beside Nathan at the defendant's table, I could hear the shaky inhale my mother took across the aisle. Small enough that I could see every muscle in my father's jaw tighten when our eyes accidentally met. Small enough that the truth had nowhere to hide. Judge Martinez entered, silver-streaked hair, black robe crisp as iron, and the bailiff called the room to order. I felt my pulse in my fingertips, in my throat, and the arches of my feet pressed flat to the courtroom floor. Nathan leaned toward me slightly. "Remember," he whispered, "they have no contract, no legal basis. Stay calm." Easy for him to say. His parents weren't sitting 10 feet away acting like I'd committed treason. "Case number 24 to 5738, Judge Martinez announced, settling behind the bench. Prescott versus Prescott. Hearing it out loud made it feel unreal, like some twisted parody. My parents looked surprisingly composed, my mother with her perfect posture and pressed blouse, my father in a suit that strained at the shoulders. Their lawyer, Mr. Davidson, rose with a smoothness that suggested he'd rehearsed this performance. "Your Honor," he began, "my clients, Gregory and Elaine Prescott, provided their daughter with comprehensive housing, food, utilities, and other necessities from age 18 to 26, with the clear understanding she would reimburse them once financially stable." Judge Martinez adjusted her glasses. "And this understanding was documented?" "It was a verbal agreement," Mr. Davidson replied, "consistently reinforced and acknowledged." Next to me, Nathan exhaled, a sound somewhere between disbelief and a laugh he couldn't allow to escape. Judge Martinez nodded once, expression unreadable. "Very well, let's hear from the defense." Nathan stood, his posture straight but not rigid, confident without arrogance. "Your Honor, no such agreement existed. Furthermore, Ms. Prescott paid regular monthly rent to her parents from her 18th birthday onward, which is extensively documented." Then he opened a folder. Dozens of pages, years of my life labeled in neat timestamps and transaction IDs. Judge Martinez glanced over her glasses. "Mr. Davidson, is this accurate? Did your clients accept regular payments from the defendant?" My mother lifted her chin. "They were token contributions, not legitimate rent." "But you accepted them," the judge pressed. My mother hesitated. "Yes, but—" Nathan slid a set of printed texts forward. "Your Honor, we also have messages from Mrs. Prescott referring to these transfers as rent, including a conversation with extended family stating, quote, 'At least Camellia pays rent on time.'" A ripple went through the courtroom. My father stiffened. My mother's knuckles whitened around her purse. "This proves nothing," Mr. Davidson said quickly. "These small payments do not negate the broader financial burden placed on my clients." "Burden?" I whispered to Nathan, unable to help myself. He gave me a calming glance. "Your Honor," Nathan said aloud, "we intend to show a clear pattern. Ms. Prescott paid her way while her parents coerced and exploited her financially. The concept that she owes them hundreds of thousands of dollars is not only baseless, it's fabricated." Judge Martinez looked directly at my parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Prescott, do you have any written documentation of the alleged agreement?" My father stood abruptly. "It was understood. We told her repeatedly that living in our house wasn't free. She knew she'd pay it back." Nathan lifted a hand. "Respectfully, Your Honor, telling someone something is not the same as forming a consensual agreement." "That's enough, Mr. Rodriguez," Mr. Davidson cut in. "My clients have witnesses, friends and relatives, who heard the defendant acknowledge her future obligations." "Hearsay," Nathan said immediately, "and irrelevant." Judge Martinez nodded thoughtfully. "Mr. Davidson, unless you have a written contract or direct evidence, this argument remains weak." My father's voice cut through the room like a knife. "Ask her where she got the money for the house." Judge Martinez turned to him slowly. "Mr. Prescott, you will speak only when addressed." But he wasn't listening. His anger was a living thing crawling out of him. "There's no way she saved that much," he barked. "We know what she earns. We know her lifestyle. You really believe she did this all on her own?" I stood before Nathan could stop me. "I did," I said, voice shaking but loud. "I worked full-time. I freelanced. I lived frugally while paying you rent. I took every overtime shift, every holiday shift. I qualified for a first-time homebuyer program. Every dollar is accounted for." The judge nodded for me to continue, so I swallowed hard and added, "I've been financially independent since I was 15, because I had to be." Mr. Davidson stepped forward. "Even if Ms. Prescott paid some rent, that does not erase the long-standing understanding that full reimbursement would occur later." Nathan let out a slow breath. "Your Honor, if I may." He picked up a second folder. This one was thinner, but far more dangerous. "These," Nathan said, handing copies to the judge and the opposing counsel, "are the plaintiff's bank statements." My father stiffened. My mother's hand shot out as if she could stop the pages from moving. "These show," Nathan continued calmly, that the defendant's rent payments were routinely labeled as family gifts rather than income. A beat of silence. And that, he added, means the plaintiffs did not report them on their taxes for 8 consecutive years. Gasps rippled across the small courtroom. My father's face went purple. This is a serious allegation, the judge said, flipping through the statements. It's not an allegation, Nathan replied. It's documented fact. My mother's voice rose, strained. We didn't do anything illegal. Those labels were just semantics. Convenient semantics, Nathan corrected, on their end. Meanwhile, Ms. Prescott's records clearly categorized these same transfers as rent. The judge's gaze sharpened. Mr. Prescott, Mrs. Prescott, did you intentionally misreport these payments? My father surged to his feet, finger shaking as it pointed directly at me. This is how you repay us? By trying to get us audited, investigated, after everything we gave you? Mr. Prescott, sit down, the judge ordered. But he didn't. He kept going, the dam finally bursting. She was supposed to help us retire, he shouted. That was always the plan. We sacrificed everything for her, and now she thinks she can walk away with our money? That house should have been ours. Every word hit like a physical blow, the truth laid bare, finally. Not spoken in cold legal terms, but in raw, furious confession. My mother grabbed his arm. Robert, stop talking. Enough, Judge Martinez said sharply. I have heard what I need to hear. Mr. and Mrs. Prescott, your testimony has significantly influenced my perception of this case. She removed her glasses, folded them, and set them down carefully. I will return with a written decision in 48 hours. The gavel struck. 2 words rang in my head as the sound echoed off the small, cramped walls of the courtroom. 48 hours. 48 hours until I learned whether my parents could legally take the home I built for myself. 48 hours until the ledger of my life was finally tallied. 48 hours. It felt like a lifetime and a heartbeat at the same time. After the hearing, I walked out of the courthouse feeling both weightless and unbearably heavy, like someone had tied a brick to my chest, yet my bones had disappeared. The autumn air smelled like dry leaves and distant rain, but I barely felt any of it. Nathan guided me down the steps with Isabella and Aunt Margot flanking me like bodyguards, though none of us spoke for several minutes. My parents exited the courthouse too, but they stayed back, arguing in low, frantic tones with their attorney. Even from a distance, I could see my father's hands shaking, my mother's complexion drained. It should have made me feel vindicated. Instead, I felt hollow. We drove home in silence. My house, my beautiful, fragile dream, felt different now. A war zone disguised as a cottage. I kept replaying the hearing in my mind. My father's rage, my mother's brittle voice, the judge's sharply raised eyebrow as she examined the bank records, and the sentence that hit me like a truck every time it resurfaced. She was supposed to help us retire. Supposed to. As if my future had always been theirs to claim. As if I had been born with a debt tattooed on my forehead. That night, sleep didn't come. I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan blades turning slow, steady circles, the only steady thing in my world right now. Each rotation scraped at memories I never wanted to revisit but couldn't escape anymore. The summer I got my first job, making minimum wage at an ice cream shop, I came home excited with my first paycheck. I'd already mentally split it. $40 for school supplies, $25 for savings, $35 as a tiny treat, maybe a necklace or a movie ticket. But my father took one look at the check and said, "Family contribution, 20%. He didn't ask. He calculated it out loud, rounded up, and held out his hand. When I hesitated, he said, "Life is a ledger, Camellia. Start paying attention." I gave him the cash. And that night, I cried in the shower so no one could hear, working 2 jobs while taking night classes, paying them rent every month, paying for groceries sometimes too because you eat more now, according to my mother, paying the family cell phone bill because you're the one who needs a smartphone for school. When I suggested slowing down because I was exhausted, my mother scoffed. "You should be grateful we let you stay here." Grateful. To pay for everything while pretending it was a privilege. The memories hit me like tidal waves, each one carrying the same cold tide. They didn't raise me. They managed me, tracked me, kept score, like I was an investment portfolio instead of their daughter. By the second night, I couldn't take lying still anymore. I went downstairs and sat at the farmhouse table, the same one where Isabella and I had first opened the lawsuit papers. The moonlight spilled through the windows, softening everything it touched, except me. Inside, I was sharp edges, splintered wood, fragments of a version of myself I didn't even know I had become. My phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. "Still thinking about you. You don't have to go through this alone. Please let me come over." Guilt twisted in my stomach. He had tried to call and text. I wasn't ignoring him to be cruel. I just felt fractured, exposed. Before I could respond, a soft knock sounded at my front door. I froze. My breath caught violently in my throat. Another knock, gentle, almost apologetic. I moved toward the door, heart pounding, and peeked through the peephole. "Aunt Margot." I opened the door immediately. "Auntie, it's almost midnight." She stepped inside with a small smile, holding a paper bag and two mismatched bowls. "I brought leftover penne. Figured you might not be eating." My throat tightened. "Thank you." We sat at the table, steam rising from the pasta like a fragile promise. After a while, she said quietly, "Camelia, I need you to hear something." I looked up. "Your father has always been who he is, entitled, controlling, keeping ledgers, as he likes to call them. But your mother made it worse. She made it elegant, palatable. The two of them together." Margot exhaled, eyes glistening. "They became a storm." "I should have left earlier," I whispered. The words slipped out before I could stop them. "No," she said firmly. "You left when you were able to, when you had the strength. That's what matters." My eyes burned, but then she added the part that broke me open. "You were never loved fairly in that house." The tears came then, quiet, steady, unstoppable. Margot reached across the table and took my hand. "But you are loved, by people who don't want anything from you." And for the first time in days, the crushing weight inside my chest eased. Morning came too fast. My nerves were raw, every sound amplified. I couldn't sit still. I must have picked up the same throw pillow a dozen times without knowing why. Nathan called around noon. "The judge has filed the written decision. We're meeting at 2 p.m. I felt my breath leave my body. "Today?" "Yes," he said gently. "Today." The courthouse felt even smaller than before. Every step echoed with dread. When Judge Martinez entered, everyone went silent. My parents sat a few feet away, looking carved from stone. My mother pale and brittle, my father rigid, jaw set so tight it looked painful. Their attorney kept glancing at them like he couldn't control the situation anymore. The judge opened a folder. She didn't look at anyone. She just began reading. Given the evidence presented, including documented rent payments, lack of any written agreement, and statements made by the plaintiffs both in filings and in open court, my heart thudded so loudly I could barely hear. "The court finds that the plaintiff's claims have no legal merit." A sound escaped me. Not quite a sob, not quite a laugh, something in between. "The lawsuit is hereby dismissed," Judge Martinez continued, "with prejudice." My mother's hand shot to her chest. My father swore under his breath. But the judge wasn't done. Furthermore, the defendant's countersuit for harassment and legal fees is granted. The plaintiffs are ordered to pay $8,000 in damages. Nathan exhaled. Isabella squeezed my hand so hard I thought something might crack. "And finally," the judge said, pausing before delivering the blow, "this court is referring the matter of unreported rental income to the appropriate federal authorities for review." The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, the rustle of papers. My father stood in shock. My mother looked like she'd been slapped. Meanwhile, a stillness spread through me like warm water. Relief. Peace. Something I hadn't felt since childhood. But it wasn't over, not yet. Because as soon as we exited into the marble hallway, my mother rushed toward me, her composure unraveling. Not screaming, not accusing, just desperate. "Camelia, please," she cried. "You have to help us. If they audit us, if we lose the house, your father's retirement, we'll have nothing." I stepped back. Nathan stepped forward, but I raised a hand. "I'll handle this." My mother's tearful eyes locked onto mine. "We're your parents. You can't just abandon us." I swallowed, hard. "No," I said quietly. "But you abandoned me first." She flinched. "We didn't abandon you," she insisted. "We raised you. We gave you." "You kept ledgers on me," I said, voice breaking but clear. "Every dollar, every hour, every moment. You treated me like a retirement plan, not a daughter." My father joined her, voice raw. "What do you want? An apology? Fine. We're sorry. Now help us." I looked at them, really looked. The people who taught me that love was a debt. The people who believed I owed them my future. And maybe for the first time in my life, I saw them not as parents, but as people. Flawed, selfish, desperate, terrified. I don't want anything from you, I said softly. Not your money, not your approval, not your guilt. My mother's lips trembled. You can't just cut us off. Watch me, I said. Then I turned, walked away with Isabella and Aunt Margot at my sides. And for the first time in 27 years, I didn't feel like someone's debt. I felt free. 3 weeks passed. 3 quiet weeks. No lawsuits. No midnight knocks. No ledger metaphors whispered like threats. Just quiet. At first, the silence felt foreign, like the absence of a noise I'd grown so used to that I didn't know how to function without it. I kept waking up expecting another message, another accusation, another attempt to claw back a piece of my life. But slowly, hesitantly, I started to breathe differently, deeper, freer. The first sign of normalcy was the smell of fresh paint in the upstairs hallway. I'd painted it a warm ivory, the kind of color that made the light feel soft rather than harsh. The second sign was the sound of music bouncing off the walls, Isabella's curated playlist, a mix of soft indie pop and dramatic piano themes from movies we used to watch together. And the third sign was laughter, real laughter, the kind that fills a home until it begins to feel like a home. That's why, when I decided to throw a housewarming party, it didn't feel like a celebration of square footage or new furniture. It felt like a celebration of freedom. I was still chopping fruit in the kitchen when Isabella burst through the door carrying 3 bottles of champagne and a bag of snacks too heavy for her to realistically hold. Cam, your house looks incredible, she said, spinning slowly like she was filming an HGTV reveal. The matcha-colored throw pillows, the framed vintage botanical prints, the little candles by the windows. Queen behavior. I laughed. It's still a work in progress. Darling, she said, placing a dramatic hand on my shoulder. Aren't we all? Nathan arrived next, carrying a folder, because of course he did. But this time it was filled with photos from his niece's school play, not legal documents. You're allowed to relax today, I said teasingly as he set the folder on the counter. I am relaxed, he said, loosening his tie exactly 1 inch. See? Aunt Margot came in right behind him, balancing a casserole dish and a bouquet of lilac flowers from her garden. These are for protection, she said with a wink. Not legally, emotionally. I smiled, really smiled, and placed the flowers in a glass vase, their soft purple color brightening the room instantly. And then the door opened again. Hey, I turned. Ethan. He stood in the doorway holding a box of pastries from my favorite bakery. His brown hair was slightly mussed, and he had a nervous smile on his face. We hadn't seen each other face to face since the court ruling. I'd kept him updated through messages, but I hadn't been ready to let someone see me while I was still piecing myself back together. But seeing him now, his gaze soft and searching, I knew I'd missed him. I brought croissants, he said, and moral support, mostly croissants. I laughed. Get in here. He stepped inside, placed the pastries on the table, and gently pulled me into a hug. The kind of embrace that makes the entire world exhale. You okay? He murmured. For once, the answer didn't feel complicated. Yeah, I whispered into his chest. I'm okay. He kissed the top of my head, and when we pulled apart, he didn't look at my house like it was just a building. He looked at it the way I hoped people would look at me someday, as something rebuilt, reclaimed, renewed. Soon the living room was full. Isabella was telling a dramatic story with her arms. Nathan was teaching Aunt Margot how to use a smartphone feature she definitely didn't need. Ethan was refilling drinks like the kindest bartender in the world. And then, in the middle of the chatter, Isabella raised her glass and tapped it with a spoon. All right, everyone, she said, her grin bright and proud. A toast. The room quieted. She looked at me, straight at me, with a softness I hadn't seen since we were teenagers. To Camelia's house, she said, the one she bought, fought for, and kept. May these walls always be filled with laughter, safety, and people who love her, not because they expect anything back, but because she deserves it. My throat tightened. Everyone lifted their glasses. Nathan, Margot, Ethan, friends from work, even a couple of new neighbors. The clinking of glass rang out like a tiny bell of victory. As I looked around, a warmth spread through me. Not the fragile warmth of relief, but the steady warmth of something built on solid ground. These people weren't my backup plan. They weren't my safety net. They weren't the ones keeping ledger lists or balancing owed debts. They were my family. Found, not assigned. Chosen, not inherited. Loved, not obligated. Later that night, when the house grew quiet and I found myself alone on the wraparound porch, I rested my hands on the railing and let the cool air wash over me. The oak trees rustled gently, almost like they were whispering, "You made it." And they were right. This was my house, my life, my second chance. No more ledgers, no more debts, no more being treated as an investment instead of a daughter. Just me, just home, just the future I carved for myself, one act of courage at a time. I closed my eyes and breathed in deeply. The scent of lilacs from Aunt Margot's flowers, the faint trace of champagne, the distant laughter still echoing through the walls. For the first time in 27 years, my future felt like it finally belonged to me. Not borrowed, not conditional, not controlled. Mine,